Tonight is really all about Beth Ann's Big 50. It is the penultimate, I love having a chance to use that word, the penultimate event in Beth Ann's Big 50. Now, a lot of you in the room know exactly what the Big 50 is all about, but some of you won't know. So Beth Ann, I'm going to invite you just to share a little bit about what is it all about. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Hello, yeah, so this year I've been raising money for Nightingale House Hospice in memory of my mum. She passed away there 3 years ago, and this year she would have turned 50. So I decided to do 50 events throughout the year. Tomorrow is the 50th. Can't believe we're there. So that's why we're here tonight, and yeah, so enjoy your night. Thank you.
Woo! Tonight is completely free. There is a bucket here if you do want to donate anything you can afford towards Nightingale House, and I really do mean what you can afford. Don't feel you're obliged to empty your wallets. If you wish to empty your wallet, I've got pockets here as well. Just put your loose change in the bucket, okay? I do have available here tonight the booklet, which is from another event we did here at Bank Street for the Big 50. This is a celebration of life and death. It's a collection of poetry which is contributed by many different people from around Wrexham and put together as well to raise money for Nightingale House. This booklet is £5, but 100% of that money goes again to Nightingale House. So if you've got any change spare, then do get yourself a copy. If you would like a copy but you can't manage to today, they are available from the Enterprise Hub as well, which is just off Queen's Square, the former Iceland building, for those of you who know it that way. And a final mention as well, we are running tonight and probably through the rest of this week, I think, Beth Ann, a silent auction. The silent auction is for the piece of artwork you can see behind me there. That is the original screen print that was used for the cover of the book. Beth Ann, can you talk to us a little bit more about that screen print, what it means to you, and how the silent auction works?
The lily is an obvious choice for death, I think, but actually it was my mum's favourite flower, and it always was, so I thought it was just fitting to put it on the book where we were celebrating life and death for her. And the silent auction, we've got a sheet of paper where you can put your name, your contact details, and you put down what you would be willing to pay for the piece, and then the one with the highest bid would get to the piece at the end, or when we finish. So yeah, that's how it works.
And who created the artwork?
I created the artwork.
Yay! I am going to get us started off tonight. I'm going to read a Christmas story which I've written myself. It's a Christmas story, but perhaps not the kind of Christmas story you may expect. I'm trying to save the world at the same time as raise money for charity and do my thing. I'm going to take the unusual step of reading off a tablet, which could go horribly wrong. I've made preparations, but bear with me, okay, on this one. So, this is a story I've written for tonight, and this one is going to be called To Catch a Falling Leaf. From the weighty welkin came a wretched wind, a wind which never weakened, a wild winter wind which wailed and walled and whistled and whispered and wheezed and whined. It took a while of trawling through the files that I had hastily thrown into my briefcase to find the piece I needed. I had written it long ago, in my days of teaching English, as an example of alliteration. Later, It had found its home in one of my bundles of unpublished, unfinished fragments, which I've always been loath to discard, lest there come a time when I find, like this very evening, the need to draw upon one of them. And the reason I needed this particular piece at this particular moment? Because it described exactly the wind which I was experiencing. Actually, it was into its third day now, 3 straight days and nights without relent, this fierce gale which had set upon my land. I had been sure at first that it would abate by dawn, but it had proven me wrong. It was a wind unlike any I had ever experienced before. I have experienced many gales, even hurricanes in my life. I have seen far worse destruction, but what I had never seen or heard before was such a vocal wind. It was, it seemed to me, as if it was carrying a message, and the message was for me. Why do I say this? Because, strange as it may sound, the wind was following me. How did I know? Because I had driven far enough over the last few December days to know. In every place I stopped, the wind blew, and yet when I asked others of the wind, they reported calm conditions, even in the places where I myself had been just hours before. It was late in the evening on the 23rd of December that I decided I had to find out what this wind was all about. I figured that, being a writer, perhaps it carried a message which I was required to write. And given that I was going to be spending Christmas alone in this decrepit, seedy motel, there was little else for me to be doing. I locked the door, took up my position at the peeling laminate desk, opened the icy window just enough to hear the howling of the wind outside without losing my papers. I sat at my laptop, a lonely, pathetic scribe, waiting to see if this wind would reveal its message. I stared outside at the pitiful attempt at a Christmas tree and my snow-dusted car, the only vehicle in the lot. I found myself wondering what the hookers did at Christmas. Even they, it seemed, had a home to go to. I was just beginning to drift off when a particularly strong gust of wind snatched at the window, slamming it shut, and then, just as suddenly, throwing it open again. And as it opened, a single dead leaf was suddenly thrown through the gap. It flew into the room at speed, and then, caught in the current of heat, began to float like a feather, before settling gently on the peeling desk in front of me. I sat there, listening to the wind outside, and staring at the leaf that now lay right beside my hand. It was a message, to be sure, but what it meant, I had no idea. "Come on," I implored the wind. "Speak to me. Reveal what you have to say." "Pick it up." I spun around in my seat to see who had whispered into my ear, but there was nobody there. "Pick it up." At first I thought the voice was being carried in the wind, and then I realised that the voice was the wind. The leaf. Pick it up. I reached out to touch it, but as I did so, I was overcome by a completely irrational sense of fear. I paused, momentarily paralysed, unable to stretch my hand any further. There was a tremendous roar outside, a huge gust, and suddenly the leaf flew into the air, caught by the draught. Fearing that if I lost the leaf, I might never discover whatever it was that was going on, I snatched at the air and closed my fist around it. Instantly, a searing pain coursed through my bones and muscles, a blinding pain that shot up my arm, through my body and into my head. Where a moment before I'd been frozen by fear, now I was seized by shock, so powerful that my body convulsed as if 1,000 volts was travelling through my veins. I tried to scream, but no words came out. I tried to open my fist, but I was powerless. The wind howled and roared, and I lay there, flinching and jerking as spasms took over my whole body. And then there was silence. The wind stopped, the lights came back on, and I was free. I sat, a shaking wreck on the floor, trying to understand what had just happened. "Is that what you wanted to show me?" I asked the wind. "Fool," the wind replied. "Fool." I hauled myself up off the floor and back into my chair and tried to gather my papers back up into some kind of order. And then a foolish curiosity took over me and I picked up the leaf once again. The moment my fingers made contact, the searing pain raced through them and up my arm as before. And then an image, just a flash, appeared before me. Enough for me to see a face, a woman's face, crying. The image flashed again, and I saw that it was the face of the woman I loved. But her face was not the healthy, joyful face which I was used to, but a gaunt, empty face with tears running down both cheeks from the dark hollows that replaced her sparkling eyes. Again and again the image flashed at me, until I could face it no longer. I released the leaf and let it fall to the floor. "Pick it up," the wind commanded me once again. I complied, fearful of what punishment I would invoke should I resist. Images of a young child flashed before me, a sad, wailing, lonely child, cold, shivering and hungry, stood before a bare table. Behind her, a skeletal, shadowy Christmas tree with nothing beneath it. I stared at the wretched, forlorn child, shivering at the picture of despair. The harrowing images of a terrible life flashed before me like a strobe, and try as I did, it was impossible to escape them, and even more impossible to deny what I saw. For the child in the images, this child with no hope and no happiness, this child was my own daughter. I began to weep. "This is not all," said the wind. And other faces began to flash into view. Some I knew, others I knew not. But every face was that of a broken person. Pitiful faces of people whose lives have been broken beyond repair. I cried, I screamed, and I begged the wind to stop showing me these visions, to release me from this terror. "Fool," boomed the wind. "Why are you doing this to me?" I begged. "Why are you showing me this? Who are you?" "Fool," boomed the wind once again. "Don't you see? I am you. What you see is what you are doing to the people around you. Through your own folly, do you still not see it? These faces, they are the faces of the people whose lives you have destroyed or are destroying. Don't you see the trail of destruction I leave behind? Don't you see how I rip things up, tear things down, shatter things, break things? Don't you see how everything in my path is damaged or destroyed? Don't you see that this is what you are doing? This is what you are bringing upon yourself. You have everything, and yet you are destroying everything and everyone in your path, destroying everything in your self-destructive path of selfishness and foolishness. Fool! Why don't you see?" And then the wind was gone. The noise, the pain, the flashes, all were gone. But the images, those terrible visions, they remained. And the words, they too remained, echoing in my mind. I sat at the desk, the dead leaf clutched in my hand, and wept once more. "I love you," I whispered, hoping my wife might hear my voice carried in the wind. "I love you," I whispered, hoping that a delicate breeze might carry the words to my daughter as she slept. "I'm sorry," I whispered, hoping it would be carried to everyone I had hurt. It was a still, silent night. The wind had gone. The air outside was cold and crisp. The stars shone brightly, and the faint sound of a choir singing drifted from somewhere unseen. I glanced at the clock on the wall. If I drove quickly, I could make it back in time for Christmas Eve. I threw my papers back into my briefcase and grabbed the car keys. Thank you.